You ever had an experience where you wanted to take control of your feelings, but no matter how hard you tried, your feelings had control of you? You might be witnessing one of those moments right now. So I'm here today to talk about feelings, about how we all have the same feelings. We all have the same structure of a feeling, how a feeling works, how you have thousands of them per second, how they're all unique to each individual, and how we all have kind of the same feelings. We just can't feel them the same way. So I'm not sure how many of you are mature enough to remember the Y2K scare, but the machines were going to stop working, the world was going to come to an end, it was going to be total chaos, right? And in a slightly lesser degree, for me, that's what happened. I was working under a fellowship at Pacific Northwest National Laboratory, and while I was extremely grateful for that opportunity, I wasn't having any fun. I mean, I had the same tasks every single day. I had very little room for creativity. I had very little connection with other people, and I really, really wanted to interface with something that actually had a face. So it was about that time that I was introduced to alternative health care, first as a patient, and then soon thereafter as a practitioner. So let's jump ahead to 2010. At that point, I'd been practicing for nearly a decade and seen thousands of people with differing responses. But the ones that were most difficult for me to overcome, the ones that were most difficult for me to help people with, were the ones that were being triggered by emotions. Your neural network consists of more than 100 billion neurons or nerve signals. These neurons process and transmit information along neural pathways. And along those neural pathways, you see the activity of neurotransmitters and neuropeptides. These neuropeptides all contain the same amino acids, and those amino acids build the same peptides, and they all have the same structure and function for every single one of us. Every single one of us is exactly organically the same. So that led me to the question, again, the foundational question, if we're all the same, why aren't we all the same? I think that question takes us to, where does a feeling come from? A better question might be, what is a feeling? I propose that a feeling is a signal, an electronic, an energetic signal that travels up and down your neural pathways, right alongside the neurotransmitters and neuropeptides. And it's these signals that create our feeling at the conscious and the unconscious levels. In order to feel these things, all in their entirety, your brain, your conscious brain, would have to process information at a rate of thousands of bits per second. We're not able to do that. So that's where stress, anxiety, things like stress, anxiety, and depression come from. Is this overwhelming amount of emotions and feelings that are happening at the unconscious level. So I'll move forward and talk a little bit about what a feeling actually is. So I believe a feeling is a group of emotions tied together in the form of an emotional peptide, much what you see up here. In fact, this is the emotional peptide that made up my unconscious response to the thought of being here today. There it is, in all its glory. Talk about being emotionally vulnerable, right? There it is. So here I am, and there it is. Unfortunately, I didn't plan for the beginning of this, but there it is, rebellious. That was my feeling at the thought of giving this talk today. And no matter how many times I talk about it, on paper it's going to look a lot like rejection, like a fear of rejection. I didn't have a fear of rejection. What I had was a fear that you would rebel against my idea. No matter how many times I tried to clear out the idea of being rejected, it just didn't fit. So these are the emotions that tie together that make a feeling for me Certainly relaxed is obviously what I am. Sometimes things don't go the way you want them to, whether you have feelings or not. So you have thousands and thousands of these things per second on the unconscious level. In fact, I tell patients that I have about 20, or every one of us has about 20,000 of these impulses that travel up and down those neural pathways every second. Give you an idea what that kind of looks like. This one's at about 20 seconds. A single feeling, one feeling in 20 seconds. So as you sit here today, every second, you have 20,000-ish. Everybody's a little bit different, right? And so if they're zipping by, here's one at 6 seconds. So if every one of those is an energetic impulse, how in the world do you stop yourself from feeling? How do you regain control if you're overwhelmed? In fact, you want to know where stress, anxiety, and depression comes from? It comes from there. It's too much. I want to talk a little bit about stress, anxiety, and depression for just a minute. Depression is the weight of the cart you're pulling. Anxiety is standing up here. Anxiety are the obstacles you have to overcome while pulling that weight. And stress is where you need to have that weight and when. It's not the weight that's the problem. It's the weight that's the problem. It's not stress, anxiety, and depression. And every single person's weight is unique. We all have the exact same feelings. We just assemble them differently. And that's why we can't talk about it. That's why we can talk about anger, but one person doesn't feel it the same way the other does. The feeling is the same, but the way it feels is different. Every single one of us is that way. So you want to talk about stress, anxiety, and depression, you really have to identify what it is that's weighing you down, that you have to overcome, the obstacles, that feeling of having to have right now. That's where the stuff comes from. Every single one of us builds feelings at a rate faster and greater than any of us can compute. In fact, if some of you remember my Y2K response or question, some of you will also remember the Commodore 64 home computers. The 5¼ floppy disk, those were fun, right? So I tell everyone that comes to see me that right here, this is your Commodore 64 home computer. And back here, this is the mainframe at CIA headquarters. This one can't talk to this one. And this one could care less what this one thinks. That's sort of how we go through our day. We try to pick and choose based on how we feel, only we don't know what we feel. And I'm not even going to talk about how off we are with our words. If you can't identify the right word, how can you identify the right feeling? So patients come to see me with pretty much the same complaint or the same issue. They don't feel good. They want to feel better. And when I ask them, what would you like to feel better with? More often than not, they can't tell me. All they can say is they don't feel good. Feeling good starts with emotions. It builds feelings. Feelings turn to beliefs, and beliefs become belief systems. What's happening in here is not a byproduct of what's going on out here. What's going on out here is a byproduct of what's going on in here. I never planned for the clicker to be rebellious. I planned for you people to be rebellious, but not this clicker. So, if I can give you a piece of advice to take away from here, a call to action, and that call to action would be this. Slow down. Don't try and outthink it. If something changes, run with it. Find your words, know your words so that you can describe what you're actually feeling. And as soon as you do that, as soon as you hit that little gold mine, you'll feel better. Thank you very much, guys.